There's hope for my city. We are the chosen ones. We are the light, reflecting His only Son.
Welcome to Hope for My City podcast. My name is Pastor G. I'm so excited today. We have a special If the Bynums, and I just want to thank them for showing up and can't wait for you guys to check them out. Say hello to everybody, y'all.
How's it going, y'all?
Hello.
Man. Well, so we got Mr. and Mrs. Bynum. Could you introduce yourself and let them know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Garen Bynum. I work for the Waco Police Department, currently the training coordinator now for the Waco Police Department. So super excited about that. But we'll talk more about career stuff and happily married to this young lady over here. So.
Yeah, and my name's DeAngela Bynum. We have been married 16 years.
Yep.
Actually, in January, we were married 16 years.
Man, hold on. I got to wait a minute. I got.
Yeah.
16
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, just at 16.
Yeah.
That is so awesome, man. So excited to have you guys here. These are some great people. So glad to have them here. You know, let's dive right into this. We're going to talk about relationships and the whole nine. So, bro, kick it off, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go to.
Yeah, so, like I said, I'm a police officer. Specifically now, I'm the training coordinator for the Waco Police Department. Had an excellent career thus far at Waco. I've worked for Waco PD since March of 2012. I went through the academy there. Prior to law enforcement, I just had a plethora of different jobs, I would say. So really Waco gave me a career and really a home, kind of a foundation, home, if you will. Prior to that, probably 10 jobs in 7 years, if I had to guess, something like that. Anything from Walmart distribution center to oil field work to, warehouse work, you name it. I kind of did a little bit of it all, built some cabinets, built some homes, whatever. I could hustle up to find some money before that.
I like him as a cop the most.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So did that, spent some time actually with her in ministry before law enforcement as well, as a youth pastor.
What?
Yeah. Well, bro, that's a crazy story we're going to get into, kind of where my sense of servanthood started, if you will.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we can talk about that.
We were doing youth ministry. I was 19, and he was
21.
21.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
we
college dropout.
Okay. So let's go there. So let's talk about place, like where are you from, like all that.
Yeah. So I'm from Texas.
Okay.
So my came from what people would normally call a broken home.
Okay.
But it was a very different style of broken home than what you probably ever heard.
Yeah.
So mom and dad got a divorce when I was like 18 months old, something like that. Mom remarried when I was 3, and I was co-raised by 4 parents. After my dad remarried, I was co-raised by 4 parents who were very interlocked and communicated very well. And
They did Christmases together.
It's kind of a crazy story, bro.
Really?
So like
Yes.
the story that you normally see from the broken home, I actually didn't experience that because the focus was about raising kids, not about themselves and whatever spats they had, right? So so raised in that world. My stepdad, who it's the home I lived in with him and my mother, he was a city manager, so had a very, very stable upbringing. Was honestly one of those kids that was fed with a silver spoon. If I wanted it, I pretty much had it. I was a good kid too. I wasn't like what you would call a hellraiser. I don't know if I can say that, but
You're good. You can say whatever you want here.
yeah, so I wasn't necessarily
very good Christian home too.
Yeah, was raised in the church and all of that.
Okay.
And then, so bounced around. So my dad was a city manager, so we bounced around every 4 or 5 years, kind of throughout the state of Texas. Did a little 4-year stint in Oklahoma, came back to Texas.
4-year stint.
I know.
Yeah, I know, right?
That means something different for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. anyways, graduated high school from a small town up in the Panhandle called Shallowater, Texas.
Okay.
Left there, went to college, and that's where the track took a hard right for me.
Okay.
So up until that point, like she said, I was raised in the church. You know, God has been a part of my life always. But up until a little bit later part of my story, you know, God wasn't, he was there, he was present, but he wasn't real to me. He wasn't my God. And I didn't know it then until I was probably 30, honestly. But he wasn't my God, he was my parents' God.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so anyways, went through college, man, lived the party life, like just messed around, didn't take anything serious, tried to play some sports my freshman year, didn't work out. You know, just didn't take anything serious, you know. So went to junior college for a year, transferred over to Sam Houston down in Huntsville, got a job waiting tables down in Conroe at a Texas Roadhouse.
Oh.
And
He was the guy that danced to all the songs and
man,
flirted
I'm telling you,
with
I was
all
a
the
party
ladies.
animal.
What?
Oh yeah, and that's where I met her.
John Travolta or what?
Bro, yeah, you name it, I was doing it.
The older the better. He loved the older ladies.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Oh yeah.
And they loved him.
Okay.
Yeah, they did. So, honestly, that's where our story actually began.
Really?
Is at that Texas Roadhouse.
Shout out to Texas Roadhouse,
Right?
man.
We actually went there. Was it like 2 years ago on our anniversary? We were like, we just got to go, just to, you know,
Wow.
because that's where we met. You know.
Wait,
Yeah.
so did you dance?
Bro, listen, I chased her for like 2 years before she'd even look at me.
Really?
Yeah, because I was like this party guy, and she was not that person. And she was like, I ain't having nothing to do with that.
Okay.
So yeah,
So do you mean did we dance on our anniversary?
Both, yes.
Okay.
Then and then, yes, on your
I'll
anniversary.
say no on the anniversary because neither one of us remember the line
Yep.
dances from back in the day. They used to do line dances and everybody would get involved, and I
Okay.
was like the leader of all of that, at least at our restaurant that we worked at.
Okay.
But neither one of us remember the dances anymore. It's been too long. So anyway, so I chased her around for a couple of years, went through a whole lot during that time. You know, I would say personally, kind of spiritually, kind of refound myself and realized like I got to make some life changes here. Was really, really big into alcohol and drinking and partying.
Okay.
So been down that road. You know, got alcoholics in my family that played a little bit of role in that as far as like decisions that I had to make.
Yeah.
Anyways, came to a hard spot, you know, in life where I was like, I got to make a change, and so I did. And it wasn't until that point that she actually paid attention to me.
Really?
So,
You will know them by their fruit.
yeah.
I'm just saying.
Oh, man.
So I don't know. Do you want to pick up on your part, and then we can kind of carry on the rest of it together, or what?
Yeah.
How do you
No, that
wanna-
sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so God has a sense of humor, but he also has like a heart for the broken, right? So,
that's right.
so I did not come from a very stable home life. So I was raised with two siblings, my older brother and sister, and my mom and dad. I was the only child from them together. But we all lived together. They weren't married. And it was a very, very abusive household. Okay. So growing up, and I'm totally open talking about all this because there's a reason why, you know, we experience these things is to be able to reach other people and let God's goodness shine through all the muck, right? Beauty from the ashes. So, but yeah, so growing up was pretty rough. My mom was a drug user and alcoholic. So she woke up at 5 a.m., had 1 cup of coffee, and then started drinking. And so she didn't work. She stayed at home because she wasn't able to carry a job or anything like that. She came from a really hard background too. She was a part of a motorcycle club. She was an old lady in a club before she met my dad. And so that was a really hard life. So that kind of carried over into our childhood. We'd have 3-day biker parties where all her people would come over and
Really?
the kids would get kicked out in a tent out in the front yard and they'd take over the house, right? So, but my dad was, he had a really, he was just sick. He believed that he was in love with my sister.
Okay.
So, everything in our childhood kind of revolved around that. My older sister, she's 4 years older than me, but, and we shared a bedroom. So everything that went on in the house, or abusive, neglect, all that stuff, you could name it, and it happened.
How many states did you live in before you were 12?
26.
Wow.
So we just nomadic, trying not to get caught, right?
Oh, wow.
So, but yeah, and so like growing up, like me and my siblings, like we just had each other, you know? And so what was crazy and man, it's so hard to explain this growing up in that kind of an environment, because my parents prayed with us every night before bed. Yeah. And so my sister at a young age, she turned against God because she was like, why would I believe in somebody like this? And y'all believe in this, but you're doing these things to us.
Right.
So, but I turned toward him. You know, he was my sanctuary. He's my only safe space. I was kind of like the lost kid, the forgotten kid. My mom got all my dad's attention, which was not good, but also, so like he was her focal point, or she was his focal point. And then my brother, he got all my mom's attention, so he was kind of spoiled. But he also got the brunt end of the stick from my dad, you know. So growing up, it was a mess, but I was kind of like the forgotten kid. So, which was a blessing in disguise, right? Because we talk about trauma and mental health and stuff.
Right.
And for a long time, I didn't think that, I wasn't the one that was physically assaulted. I wasn't the one that was hurt and pursued. So I was like, I'm not the victim, right?
Right.
But whenever you start looking at the effects of neglect on children, it's a big deal. It can scar a kid for a very long time, and they can't, don't develop good attachments and trust and all those things.
Yeah.
Well, and you also, which is another part of your story we can talk about later or whatever, but you also have or have had internal guilt related to all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as a kid, I always thought it was my job to protect my sister. So, I'd sit outside the door until 3 a.m. making sure that he wasn't going to come in,
Really?
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And how old were you?
So I was
Something about like 9 and 10 years old.
Yeah. Whenever I
Like a
found out
kid.
about it, I was about 9.
Okay.
And then we remained in that environment, kind of shuffling around. Whenever we get caught or found out or get, some kind of heat from law enforcement, we'd jet in the middle of the night, leave half the stuff in the house. And
Really?
oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
she's lived in a school bus. She's lived in
Yeah.
a U-Haul truck. Like
In a
lived
tent.
in a tent.
In a
Wait. So
So we come from different backgrounds, bro. We come from different backgrounds.
yeah.
wow. So okay. So
From one extreme to the other.
yeah. So when you say get caught, like what does that entail? Like
Let me
Yeah,
answer that
go
one.
for
So
it.
I don't know if they were necessarily close to getting caught, but when the dad, and that's all I'm going to refer to him as, when her bio dad would feel like somebody was getting close to the family,
okay.
law enforcement or not, man, that was it. So he had a paranoia about what he
Okay.
was doing.
Okay.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, I mean, because he was doing it.
Absolutely. And sometimes, so, with that kind of behavior and that kind of stuff, they're very controlling. So my father was very controlling about who we talked to. We couldn't go spend the night anywhere. We didn't, we went to school and home. We didn't play any kind of sports or anything because it was a threat, right? So even the people around us, I remember at one point in time we were living in a house and a neighbor kept coming around, and he was kind of younger. I think he was interested in my sister. I can't remember, but he got real close, and at one point, he saw something he shouldn't have seen, and that was the time we left in a U-Haul in the middle of the night, left out half of our stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were always moving and didn't have any roots at all.
So you've known us for a while, but you didn't know that story, did
No.
you?
No.
God's done a wonder and a work, I'm telling you.
So let's move past that because there's so much more, but
Yeah.
there's not,
So
just to move the story. But
absolutely. So 12, I went to CPS. So I was in CPS 12 to 13. And then I was doing my sister and brother, they were staying with my mom and some other people. But whenever we went to CPS, basically.
and Dad ran off to Alaska.
Dad ran off to
and
Alaska.
Never came back.
Yeah. So he is, yeah, that's where he is. So,
He went to Alaska and created his own prison, basically.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So at 12, CPS got involved. My dad took off. My mom came back to Texas. We were living in New Mexico at the time, I think. And when we came back to Texas, we went to CPS. My mom went and started living with my brother, my sister, and of course they continued that trajectory, which resulted in my sister and brother. I mean, we were around drugs all the time anyway. My sister was really heavily into drugs at a young age. We were, it was just another thing to have weed everywhere, drinking, fighting over the worm in a bottle of tequila. Yeah. And I went to CPS at 12. So, but, so during CPS, my brother and my sister just they didn't have any breaks, right? Because my dad was the one that was like super careful and paranoid and all the things. And my mom was self-medicating, just trying to survive, but not, So she went downhill. My brother and my sister went downhill, and that's where they got really deep into drugs and stuff. And then at one point in time, CPS was letting me visit family, right? So family placement. And so I was visiting one on the weekend somewhere, and then I came home. I had visited one time an aunt and uncle, and I came back to the foster home, and that Friday I was gonna go visit, but then I had told my counselor, because back then every CPS kid had to see a counselor.
Yeah.
So I saw the school counselor, and I told him, yeah, I'd love to be able to move in with my aunt and uncle at some point. My brother's living there at that time. And so I got home that Friday, and all my stuff, well, not all my stuff, the select things that they wanted me to have.
Like a couple of bags, that's it.
Okay.
In
Yeah.
like the Christmas bags
Yeah.
and like trash bags and stuff. Some of that stuff, it was all packed up and ready. As soon as I got off the bus, they packed me up and took me over there. My aunt and uncle didn't even know I was coming. Like, they were like,
Really?
what? Yeah. But it ended up, it was good. It was a very stable household.
The aunt and uncle's household.
Yes. Aunt and uncle's
Right.
household was very stable.
Okay.
So now, then from there until the time I met Garen, I kind of bounced around a bit. I'd spend a year there, and then there was this lady that took me in because it was, trying to raise a kid that's not your kid, that has stuff is hard.
Sure.
And so I kind of bounced around between there and here, and this lady that helped and took me in, and then back over there, and then I thought I was going to go in the Marines for a little while, and then God got a hold of me and was like, no. And then I ended up living with my grandpa, my papa, my mother's father. But at 14, amidst all this kind of couch surfing / you have a bed and come do your stuff and then go to your room kind of thing. It was my mom had died when I was 14, so I got the call, and thankfully I was able to go there and see her. But they tell me that she had an aneurysm in her head, and that she had tried to quit drinking,
Okay.
cut
Cold
it off
turkey.
cold turkey, and then she died because of that.
Wow.
I don't actually know what happened because I've heard conflicting stories, but I mean, I'd love for the worst way to die, right? it's a bad way to die, but nobody, I would have loved that she not die. But just thinking that she was trying to get clean and sober kind of has comforted me throughout the years. So, and then I met Garen at the Texas Roadhouse.
Texas Road dancing.
Yeah.
Dancing.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So from that point, when we actually met, we both have we disagree on what we think our first date was, but
God. Lord help me.
Anyway, so we had really kind of started. I would say just a good friendship, right? Like I saw her and I just saw the godliness and purity in her and knew that was something I wanted to be a part of.
Right.
Yeah, because that's all I had.
Yeah, and like I said, I had gone through my stuff and had started making changes, and then I think she noticed that. I'd actually moved away, but she had noticed that. So we started our relationship off really with a long distance relationship.
Right.
And then I moved back to Conroe for her.
Okay.
And then we called ourselves official, I guess, dated for 6 months, got engaged, were engaged for 6 months, got married, boom, that was it.
Yep.
Because at that point, we had both lived a lot of life. We had both been through stuff, and I think we were both looking for the same thing, which was trying to figure out how to have a godly life, a godly relationship, and stability. And you know,
yeah, we were ready to
we were just ready to move on past the crap
together
that we had been through.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So we did.
Start a life together and with God.
Yeah.
So then, okay. So when did the law enforcement side come in with you?
So we'll get to that. Okay, so let's move on. In our relationship, we were engaged. We actually started serving at a cowboy church down in Conroe. It's called Caney Creek Cowboy Church.
Okay.
And that's where we became the youth pastor. We actually helped start the youth ministry there. So our first Wednesday night Bible study, we had
It was so great.
we had 4 teenagers. That was
4.
it.
Okay.
It was phenomenal.
Been there.
Yeah. So
Well, and by the time we left, it was up to like 60 kids.
Come on.
yeah,
Something.
60, 70,
Yeah.
something like that. But
It was-
yeah, no, it was good. And now they're running like now
It
they're
was
running like
amazing.
150, 200 every Wednesday. But
Wow.
anyway, so what we figured out in that community, so that the community that we were in is like Grangerland Cut and Shoot area, which is like East Montgomery County. Man, lots of meth, lots of dope, lots of stuff. So it's a very unchurched area. But that specific church just had a way of reaching people. And part of that was the pastor that we were under, Mark Grimes, who is actually from Waco and had been in the McLennan County Jail and has his own story, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
I would love for you to connect with him someday.
Yeah, sure.
But so we started youth there, and what I figured out really quick is most of the boys that were coming to youth were all involved in high school rodeo. And so I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to get these guys to trust me. Well, if you've ever met somebody that's in rodeo, they only trust each other. So I had to figure out how to get involved in that. So
I was not country. Like I came from like dirt poor, like ramshackle house, but like not horses, right? That's different.
Yeah. So what I ended up doing just to gain the trust of these teenage boys, I got involved in the rodeo ministry. And my twisted thinking was all of these boys, they all rode bulls and from the age of like 14 up until they were adults, right? So my twisted thought was, what better way to get them to trust me than to go be a bullfighter at their rodeos
And protect their butts.
and protect them and gain
Yeah.
their trust. So that's what it is. So I spent the next probably 8 years, man, fighting bulls with them and being in the dirt and rodeoing and getting run over by these 1,500-pound animals.
That was fun.
Wow.
And that's how I just jumped into the ministry like that.
That's what a youth pastor's supposed to be.
Man, it was
Doing life
intense.
with them.
Yeah, it was intense. And like I said, I just had to figure out a way to gain their trust. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where I would say the sense of service started. So at that church, one of my best friends, and even still a very close friend today, was a guy there that was a deputy sheriff for the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
And I'll never forget, first time he ever pulled in the driveway of the church, he pulls up in his uniform, and he's in his sheriff deputy car, and everybody's looking around like, we can't go talk to him. Are you wanted? Are you wanted? I was the only one. They were like, hey, we know you're clean. Go talk to him.
Yeah.
Right? So I go and talk to this guy. We start off a friendship. Anyways, like 5-6 years goes by, and we had 2 brand new babies and trying to figure out life. And he looks at me and goes, you need to go look into law enforcement. Like, you really need to check this out, because this is who you are. The servant side of law enforcement. This is who you are.
Well,
Wow.
and the protector.
And the protector, yeah.
He's been a protector since the day I met him.
Yeah.
And that's his heart. That's everything he does is in service, but also to protect others. And so he does that as a cop. He does that as a husband, and as a dad.
Yeah. So anyway, prior to that, man, I'd never even thought about law enforcement. Like, never. I've been pulled over like 15 times for speeding, and
Really?
never been to jail. But it just never dawned on me that was something I even could do.
Right.
And so I just listened to what he said, prayed about it. My parents had just moved to the Waco area, and we were looking for, I'd say, a better financial situation, and we needed some help on the home front. One of our oldest son was born with some very special circumstances that, as a very young boy, we needed a little bit of help with. So. Medical stuff and whatnot.
Right.
So I looked at Waco, and I was like, hey, Waco will pay for me to go to the academy and all this stuff. Let me just give it a shot, right? Mm-hmm. So I applied and got hired. And then we picked up and moved to Waco.
Yep.
That's how I got into law enforcement. Just a good friend.
Wow. And so while you were going to police academy, y'all were already together, right?
Yeah, we were already married. Already had 2 boys.
Yeah.
Already had 2 boys.
Our second son, I had him in the
Was
hospital.
a newborn.
Yeah, he's about a month. Well, he was more than a month early, but he stayed in the hospital for a month. Whenever his first day started was supposed to be Monday.
So my first day at Waco was March 26, 2012.
There you go.
Aiden, our youngest one, got released from the hospital at 5 p.m. on March 25th, 2012.
Yeah. So we did
in
the
Conroe.
whole. Yeah.
Oh.
So we drove here she had a newborn in her car seat, and I was driving
in
a
the back.
U-Haul.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really?
And we were begging the doctor to release him because he was born a micropreemie.
Okay.
And our first son was born a micropreemie as well, with a lot worse circumstances than Aiden was. And so we were like, listen, we've been through this, let him go, like, we can handle it, it's fine.
Yeah.
And we had to like prove it to him, and then he let him go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was nuts.
Wow, sounds like it. But okay, so this whole time, as a youth pastor, the deputy sowed the seed. I'm sure y'all talked about it all the way to the point to where now doors are opening up and there's a decision being made to go into police academy. And so, what were you thinking this whole time, considering your past? I mean, everything, right?
Actually, don't know that we've ever talked about this specific.
I know.
part.
It's interesting though, because so I was also going through some stuff. I think that in that time that you're talking about, God really carried us. And so with our first son, premature, micropreemie, he was in the hospital for three months straight in downtown Houston, right?
Multiple surgeries
in
and
the
all kinds of
NICU,
stuff.
neonatal ICU.
Oh.
And then after that, we got pregnant again a year and a half, almost 2 years after that, and then had Aiden. And so the first pregnancy and after that, I myself had some issues. I had postpartum. So that first year after Gage was born, our oldest, was kind of like in a daze, I worked and everything trying to take care of newborn, and I'm thinking, it's a newborn. I'm just exhausted all the time. I don't have any kind of empathy for anything, whatever. And we didn't really realize what was going on until our second. So our second one, after we got home in Waco, that postpartum hit even worse.
Okay.
And so it was some
Well,
days.
but we also had moved in with my parents. So one thing we didn't want to do was me start a brand new job in the police academy where it's like do or die. You know, if you fail, you lose your job, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Okay. So mid-20s moving in with your parents.
Yeah,
that
so we
was
moved
fun.
in with my parents. I was 27 years old. She was 25, and so
But
that
it was a
I don't think that
blessing.
helped the
It was
situation either
absolutely a
because
blessing.
yeah, it did.
No,
but it just
yeah.
didn't help.
Well, I think it did. I know that like
No,
socially.
I mean it didn't help like the depression
Oh, yeah.
piece of it.
Well, but I think that's where God moved, right? Because that 2 years and that whole decision time, like, is he going to be a cop? Like, I took that in and I prayed about it, but at the same time, it was really hard for me to connect emotionally to anything, right?
Gotcha.
And so, like, I think that God carried us through all of those decisions in a really special way. And even moving in with his mom and dad was a blessing because after I got home with Aiden, I had a hard time getting out of bed. So I had a 3-year-old and a newborn I was trying to take care of. And if I had been at home alone, it would have been rough.
Yeah.
And any spare time that I had at home, I was studying, just trying to pass, right?
Yeah.
So,
So his mom and that safe space was like a blessing, man. She took care of our oldest kid and fed him and fed us and did our laundry and for a little while. And until I
shout out
came back
to
around.
the Bynums. Is that
her last name is Evans. But
Evans.
Dawn Evans. Mama Dawn.
Yeah, shout out to Mama Dawn.
Yes.
Miss Evans, thank you for all that you have did. That was awesome. Man, I mean, this is a big deal when you have parents that can help you out that way. I mean, it doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
I mean, but when it does, man, what's celebrated is repeated. So if you're out there helping your kids in that way, thank you on behalf of all of us that are children.
Absolutely.
So we finished the academy, and I say we because I think it was a joint effort. I didn't know how to study. She had to teach me how to study, which is also why I didn't finish college. You know what I'm saying?
I can relate.
So finished the academy, and then we got the heck out of the house and got our own place. And I, just like most other rookie cops, man, I went straight to midnights.
Yeah.
So working midnights. She had newborns at home. Living in a 2-bedroom apartment here in Waco. Just trying to figure it out.
So, okay,
That's about the time that the devil was like, all right, let's just mix this up.
Yeah.
That was the hard time.
That's where we figured out who we were individually in Christ, and I would also say within our marriage in Christ.
Okay.
A lot of growing during that time. A lot of growing.
how so?
So I would say, can I go there?
Take it.
So
It's God's story.
we both, it is. We both had being on midnights, right? Like I'm trying to sleep all day during the day. She's trying to keep the kids quiet in this 2-bedroom apartment in the middle of Waco. And then at night, when you would want your spouse next to you, I wasn't there. I was gone. And since she was, since we had 2 young ones at home, and I know a lot of people, not even in our community, but man, just really across the nation right now, like it was, for us, it was just as financially cheap to like, for her not to work and just keep the kids at home than it would have been to pay for daycare. Because daycare was, even then, 12 years ago, was stupid expensive,
Yep.
And we, on a brand new cop salary back then, we definitely couldn't afford it.
And I was in school at the time.
Yeah, and she had just started started college, really.
Yep.
So my thought was, try to be the financial rock. I've always kind of had, like she said, I've always like this protector piece, right? But part of that for me and her has always been, I've always had the mindset of like, man, I want to just give her everything she's never had, which, you've heard her childhood. There's a lot she didn't have.
Right.
When her and I got married and she moved in with me, she brought all of her possessions to my apartment, which was a plastic tote. of stuff.
Yeah.
Like clothing and all, that was it. Like she just didn't have stuff, you know?
Okay.
And so I always wanted to just work to give her what she's never had. And so during that time, man,
Oh, that's right, bro.
I just worked my tail off. I was working like 18-hour days, 7 days a week, you know, off-duty jobs, doing this, doing that. I was either, when I was at home, I was sleeping. That's it. And then, you know, I'd wake up, throw the uniform back on, and I was out the door again doing something, going to work in overtime, something, you know, trying to make some money. Yeah. And so two things happen.
And what's interesting about this is where the devil gets you, man, is because whenever you start isolating, right? So like I have some PTSD and some depression from all kinds of stuff. I still struggle with some of the depression.
Right.
But I'd isolate, right? And naturally, with the job that he has, whenever you're a rookie, it's just norm. You get the crap shifts. You get the worst of the worst time. You know, you get the lowest pay, and you get all the reports that you have to write. Everybody above your head that's been there longer than you makes you do all the crap work.
Initiation.
Initiation. And so, like, he would come home exhausted, right? And like, and then you have the typical, like, where the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And so I had my schoolwork, and I had 2 babies that I didn't know how to parent, because whenever you do postpartum and then there's an attachment issue, you know? And so, like, the emotion that I have now, right, for my kids, and it's not that I didn't love them. I loved them, but it wasn't all the feels.
What you always told me is that you didn't know how to love them.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have that example growing up.
Well, that too, yeah. And so, like, having kids and trying to be the sole, like he's the provider, right? I'm the nurturer. And so I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. And I fed them, I clothed them, I cuddled them, but it was really hard because I always had guilt, because I was like, I should feel more, you know? And that's straight up postpartum stuff, right?
Yeah. I think the bigger piece to that, though, is the first thing that happened really there is busyness set in. And so because we were so busy, that gave me an excuse for I didn't have time to be in church. I had to work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so because we weren't in church, we weren't pouring in God, like, you know, you pour out what you put in, and we weren't putting in what we needed to put in. Yeah. So busyness happened, right? And then with busyness comes things like idle hands and loneliness, which I think is a part of both of our individual journeys, right?
And then I don't think that I valued where you were in that moment. So I don't think his
and I
brain
didn't communicate where I was either. Like,
yeah, we were bad at communication back then.
yeah.
Okay, hold on. So can you give us, like, what's an example of you looking at it now and saying, we just were bad at communication?
Man, just like conflict resolution, right? So one of the things that I realized, I would say maybe even 5-6 years ago, like, it took me a long time to understand this and realize it, but I had what I call an unfair, it's a 2-part thing, an unfair and unspoken expectation of her and who she's supposed to be as a wife and as a mother. And the reason for that is because of what I saw in not only my mother, but my stepmother, who were both incredible, godly women that you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And so that's what I expected.
And they served their kids with that passion.
Yeah. Right. So, in a funny story, we always joke about this with my mother. My mother's a stay-at-home mom. She doesn't work. She cleans the house all day long. She sweeps the floor 3 times a day. She vacuums the floor 3 times a day to see the lines on the carpet. You know,
yes,
we would come home from school and from football practice, and the meal was on the table. She wasn't cooking. It was done. You know what I mean? So she was that kind of nurturer and person. I didn't have to do laundry. It was done for me. You know.
I was not that.
Right. So, and there was just a lot of that kind of stuff that, like, what do you mean you didn't wash clothes today? Like, you've been home all day. Why not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And and what I realized is that, okay, I'm holding this expectation of who I think she's supposed to be.
Right.
And I'm not acknowledging who she is.
And I did the same thing.
Yeah.
So while he was providing, he was working his tail off. He was going to these crime scenes where people were getting hurt and beat up, and people were calling him names
Fights
at
and
work.
foot chases.
And
Yeah, I spent the first 3
spitting
years of
on
my
him
career
and-
working East Waco.
Oh my
you know,
gosh.
on midnight.
Okay.
So
And he loved it though.
Shout out to the
but-
East Side.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah, that's
Hold
what I'm
on,
talking about.
where's it at? Where's it? I gotta do my little horn. Shout out to the East
I
Side.
loved it. I loved it.
He did, and he was so excited. But whenever he got home, I would hear all the things, and I'm like, I'm excited for you, but you weren't here. Like, so for me, my love language is quality time.
Okay.
This little book changed our life.
Yes, the 5
Amen.
love languages.
Amen.
If you guys haven't
Amen to
heard
that.
it,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Yes, that's
And-
right.
And so he was busy doing everything that he thought that he needed to do as the husband and provider of the home, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm doing what I need. I'm working my tail off. I'm protecting these people. I'm doing this really good job. I'm trying my best here. And my unspoken and my unspoken and unrealistic expectation of him was love me like nobody else has ever loved me, right? Like be here when I wake up, be here when I go to sleep, like snuggle me, like all the things, right? Spend as much time as you want, as I want you to with me. That's my love language, right? So I don't care about you paying for us to have a new car. I didn't have anything growing up, and I was just fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's literally said, like, I don't need the car. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yep.
You do need the car, right? And
No, I don't.
And just
I
because
don't
I think you
care.
need the car, I think you need the best car, right?
Yep.
That's where my brain went. And she's like, I don't care at all about a car.
Don't take that overtime shift. Just come home and sleep with me.
So she's saying, I need you, not the newest car.
Right.
Just give me a car, anything, a
Yeah.
bike, whatever.
Right.
But okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so those kind of things were happening. Like I said, I think loneliness set in. You know, I've already said we weren't pouring in, so we definitely
Yeah.
weren't putting out, you know, in that sense. And that's when like the real sins, you know, individual sins kind of started creeping in as well.
Yeah.
I've had my own kind of, I would say, personal struggle and journey with like addiction to pornography and that whole, you know, whirlwind of a mess that is. You know, a small piece of like adultery type stuff, you know, on this side. And so it was just, we were a wreck. I would say we were an absolute wreck.
Yeah. Well, and that was on my side. The emotional adultery came from me connecting to someone that
From a previous relationship. Because
gave me time.
I
And
wasn't.
that's where the devil came from, right? So, like, the devil came in and it was like, oh, you're not, this is what I heard from the devil, you're not good enough for him to say no to those overtime shifts or spend time with you instead of sleeping, which was super unfair, completely inappropriate, and didn't fit the situation. But the devil got in my head and I was like, you don't care about me, you know? And then at the same time, he was going through his own stuff.
Right.
Neither one of us were communicating with each other. We weren't leaning on each other. We weren't
We
leaning
barely
on
talked.
him. Like it was a wreck, you know. We were, I would say we were a wreck until it all kind of came to a head one night, and then it was like, okay, we gotta figure this out.
Yeah.
And so one thing that we've always said from day one, even before we were married, was the importance of the commitment to each other and to God. And so when it all
Even
came
if we
to a
don't
head,
like each other,
at that moment,
we're going to stay together and we're going to work through it.
we're going to figure this out. And so that's what happened.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've talked about busyness,
Yeah.
right? And
And what's interesting, man, and what I think about all the time, especially being in the position that I'm in, right? So like I see these new cops coming in, and I have a direct influence on these guys now, and I've been there, and I've had those emotions, and I've had those experiences of working 18-hour days for 7 days a week, and and that's the thing that I focus on now with these guys. It's like, yeah, I know you're going to go out and you're going to hustle a little bit, because that's, for us, that an off-duty job is extra money you can make, right? So it's a hustle. That's exactly what it is. They're going out and hustling in a way that they can. But at the same time, you know, if you're a husband and you're a father, like we gotta think about where our priorities are, right?
Yeah.
So I focus on that a lot with these guys.
No, that's good. I'm glad you said that because that's where I was going.
Yeah.
Like for the rookies that may be looking at this, how important these life lessons are. From y'all's relationship with God, with each other, being in law enforcement, but not just people in law enforcement. I mean, that happens to be our story, but your people. We're all people.
Absolutely.
Right? We're all humans here. And
yeah,
so
you could take the law enforcement piece out of it, man.
Absolutely.
And the same would have still been happening. I still would have been trying to hustle and figure out how to make money and working my tail off and leaving her at home alone. And
so the
I think
priorities,
the struggles,
right? We mean to do, our intent is in the right place. We're trying to, well, I'm doing this for the family, right? Being a provider, right? Which is important, but we end up being unbalanced with that, right? To where at the same time you need to be at home, right? Like if you don't work, you don't eat. The Bible says that. That's important,
right?
But it can't be the most important, right? Then that's backwards hustling, right? It's important, but it's not the most important. And so as Christians, we have this value system that says, we're nothing without God. And so I need God. So I got to make sure that relationship is numero uno. And then with that is my relationship with my family, right? In this case, with your wife or with your husband, because if you get that right, if you get the order right, if you get God and then each other, right, then you're going to get the kids right. You're going to get the whole family unit right.
But we were missing that whole foundation.
The whole foundation.
Yep.
We didn't have that at the time.
And I think that, so all of that, the emotional affair, the pornography, all that came to a head. I had gone to him one night and I told him what was going on, and I was like, we got to do something. This is not what we need to do. But God blessed us from that. There was a lot of pain. There was a lot of tears. There was a lot of guilt and shame for my part,
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely, I think we both probably had the opportunity to walk out the door if we wanted to.
Right.
But we were both committed to figuring it out. And that's what we did.
And God showed up in that moment. Like, after that, our love for each other grew exponentially. We learned what it actually meant to forgive one another, even whenever we still struggle sometimes with some of that stuff, like whatever that looks like. I think that years after that, we were still struggling with pornography for a little while.
Yeah, I was going to say, my sin struggle didn't go away automatically. And it was, which is a whole nother thing. But, I mean, that's just...
But we learned how to forgive each other through that. Like, and I never would have thought that I would have ever entertained ideas like that, ever in my life. And the devil just picks and picks and picks at you. And he knows your buttons, and he just wants to kill, steal, and destroy.
Yep.
Right.
Don't let him.
I appreciate you guys for being transparent. I mean, this is so important because there's not a lot of people that's willing to talk about the truth and the reality of being a human, right? And could you speak more to the emotional affair in general? Like, what is, as far as that concept, that idea? A lot of people don't understand that's a thing, right? And so, can y'all speak to y'all's understanding on what that is, and maybe some now looking at some boundaries that folks can set or even be aware of to kind of bring a little bit more to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you want to touch on that one?
Yeah. So I think that, like, what is it exactly, right? So it's a connection with someone other than your spouse in an emotional way, right? Where if unchecked can lead to a physical, affair. And some people don't see that as an issue. It's just like getting close to somebody. Oh, we grew farther apart and I started spending time with this dude. He gets me now, right? You hear that a lot. In no way, shape, or form do I condone any of the things that I did.
Right.
Exactly the opposite. I think the emotional affair was just as much, if not more harmful and hurtful than a physical affair. Because
How so?
Well, and you can speak more on that, but at the same time, it was very selfish. Whenever you're thinking about having feelings for another person other than your spouse, you know, it destroys something there. It really erodes from the inside. All the trust, all the communication.
That's what I was going to say is trust was a huge thing that I struggled with for many years after that, was whether or not I could trust her, right? So like, I mean, that's the truth behind it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and the same thing on him. So we have a open rule, like we have the same passcode on our phones.
Okay.
It's like, I just pick it up and look at his, and it provides accountability for him too, knowing that I'm going to see his phone.
Right.
And it used to, man, I'd be like sweating bullets, right? Like, oh my God, what did I forget to delete?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did I forget to delete? Because there's always something.
Yeah.
Right? There was always something.
Bro, talking about,
So
Yeah.
we're preaching over there.
yeah, the great thing is that, you know, there, like I said, there's freedom in that now. So I'm not like, she's like, hey, let me see your phone. I'm like, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I even
Yeah.
went
And
as
it's not-
far.
And
even
it's
went
not
as-
even about checking anymore. It's just about like looking at, hey, like who's he talking to that he forgot to tell me about? Like now it's not even a thing.
Yeah, and that I used to do the same thing, like especially with the trust thing. And what's interesting, I was never worried about somebody other than the person that she was engaging with, right? It was always that one individual, and I don't know that it's necessarily I didn't trust her, but I dang sure didn't trust him.
Gotcha.
And so I was always looking for that because he would take an opportunity at any moment to reach out if he could. And I knew that. And so I was always like looking for that. So she's like, hey, I'm going to take a shower, right? I'm like, okay. Is he trying to text? Like,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that leads into boundaries, right? So
Okay.
So boundaries that we have in place, I think that a lot of these were similar, like before. Like we've had them since we were young, right? But I just didn't enforce them all the time, especially in this situation.
Okay.
But I think that now, even after that, it's become a freedom for me, because some of the boundaries that I have is I don't go alone with someone that I'm working with anywhere. I don't meet them up for drinks. I don't go to lunch or anything unless it's like my direct supervisor or something like that that's work related.
that's the opposite sex anyway.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
opposite sex.
Right.
And I even go so far as to I don't give guys my personal number that I work with, or add them to Facebook. If they want to be a part of our lives, then they'll get on his Facebook. Like give me
Which
your
I
wife's
actually
Facebook.
Don't have anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway.
You don't?
No, but that's a whole.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I was going to say, really, the only reason why it
Well, that's a
actually fits
boundary.
the story.
Yeah.
So we now have a teenage son. Yeah.
Okay.
So the whole reason why I deleted Facebook is because you can't control what other people post.
Okay.
And in an attempt to not only protect my own eyes from my own past sin struggles, but trying to teach him how to do that and what it means to do that. And so now that I have a teenage son, trying to lead him appropriately.
Right.
Because those topics weren't really discussed in my house.
Yeah.
Like there was, we grew up a little bit Southern
And
Baptist.
I got the
there was,
wrong message as a kid
Yeah.
on all things like that. So
Wow.
Yeah. So that's honest. That's the God's honest truth behind why I did it. It's just hey, this is what I had to do to really protect my own eyes, from, like I said, you can't control what pictures your friends on Facebook put on their feed, right?
This is true.
Yeah. So I don't want there to even be, like, I don't want that to be a stumbling block in any way. You know what I mean? I don't need somebody to post something of a girl in a bikini and make that thought go down a rabbit hole or a trail that I can't stop, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I just need to stop. And with now having a teenage son, that's what I'm trying to show him is this is what I'm willing to do. And man, I was a Facebook junkie. Like I was all over social media. Part of my career was being the public information officer and kind of being the face of the department for a little while.
Right.
So, I mean, I was on Facebook for
all the time.
like 6 to 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
right.
scrolling comments and all the stuff. And so when I got out of that, I was like, I got to get out of it.
Yeah.
I've got to do this because it just creates
No, that's good.
a trail.
Yeah, it's so important to set boundaries.
Right.
There's a lot. You guys are the first couple that I've come across that even understand that concept, right?
But understand this too, like we understand it because we've had failures there.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
it was boundaries that were set for ourselves based on we're so committed to God and so committed to each other that we have to do this
Yeah.
to be successful there.
Well, what I'm trying to say is no. What I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of people that I've talked to in my 20 plus years, and even though those things have happened in people's lives, they haven't come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It usually goes, as you know, other ways, and
Right.
it's done. Right. Or if it's not, then it's still where it was back then. Right. Where there's a wedge, where there's all that, but the emotional, the boundaries that are important to make sure you don't have an emotional affair, right? To me, is so important, right? There's a book out there called Hedges. I don't know if you've ever read the book
No, I
Hedges.
hadn't.
I've heard of it.
And it speaks on this, and it's oh my gosh, it's one of the most important books that I've ever read outside of the Bible, right? But it's by Jenkins. I forget his name. Anyway, it's called Hedges, How to Protect Your Marriage and stuff. But I mean, it starts. It has been said that long before there is a physical divorce, that there is a emotional divorce.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand that, right? You show me anybody that has gotten a divorce, I'll show you someone that has been divorced emotionally before they even got
Yeah.
physically divorced. And of course it goes spiritually, you're just divorced all the way around, right? Before everybody can see what's really happening. Has been going on for a long time. And so that emotional attachment to somebody else it's really unhealthy when you're in a relationship and you have a husband or a wife. It's supposed to be exclusively for each other, where you become one, not with somebody else, but with each other,
Yeah.
right? And what happens is, when you're at work and you're spending 8 hours at work or longer, and if the emotional tank, for instance, is not being filled, if the grass is not being watered, right? If you're not careful, somebody else will water your grass, whether you realize it or not. It's just facts,
Yep.
right? So if I'm not having a good day at home, the whole month, let's just say, the quarter, this happens. It's possible. It happens to the best of us. And if I find myself overworked, overcommitted, and there's a wedge there at home for all kind of reasons, right? It just happens, right? This is the juggle of life, right? I have to be very careful and practice that I don't attach myself to anybody at work. And it happens just like this. I'm at work. Well, I'm gonna use you since you've been the person already on the chopping block.
Go ahead.
But Garen goes to. Did I say I'm always messing up your name?
Yeah.
So Garen goes to work, and somebody says, "Oh, Garen, I really love your cologne. It smells so good." Oh, that's affirmation. Oh, okay, yeah, appreciate it. I mean, what do you do? Oh, great. Well, y'all been so busy at home, you haven't had a chance to say anything about, hey, you look good. Hey, you look. Now all of a sudden, Garen, your eyes are so blue. Man.
Heard that comment.
But you see what I'm saying? It matches
Yep.
your tat or your shirt. Wow, and all of a sudden, them strokes of affirmation, and you're not getting it at home.
Or here's another interesting one that
Okay.
I've actually heard, and her and I've talked about this too before, right? But like, hey, you got cool tattoos. How many tattoos you got? Where are they at? Can I see them?
Yeah.
Like,
and then let's just say, so listen,
even
I know,
tattoos takes it that way, man.
but there's a science to all this. Here's what you got. Some of y'all are like scoffing. You're like, oh my gosh, they're so whatever. No, but listen, you better mind. We're trying to give you some wisdom here. I'm trying to tell you, there's a science to all this, as there is anything else. When you understand, there's a book out there called The Love Languages, which I mentioned, the 5 love languages. Go read that book, get the audio book, then you'll understand the science of who we are as people. It'll help you. Then the Hedges book, right? I think it's Tim, anyway, Jenkins, I don't know, but the Hedges book, okay? I'm gonna put a link in the description, okay, for all these books. When you go in and read and understand about who we are as people as it pertains to relationships, it helps you to not end up in places that you will end up if you're not careful. And if you're there, there's a way to turn that, what could be a loss, into a lesson and move forward and try to help other people. And that's what we're all trying to do here from all these different angles. So if your love tank is not filled at home, let's just say Garen's is, correct me when I mess up your name.
No, you're good.
Because I be chopping up everybody.
You've hit it every time.
So Garen, trying to get used to and confident.
Yeah.
Say his is physical touch, right? Let's just say. And because they're so busy, there's no physical touch going on. You're overworked, overcommitted, you're home, you're drained. You know, you take a shower, you come home, you're asleep, the baby's crying. And
Go ahead and throw a little bit of depression in there.
Yeah, depression in there. You know, you got your own junk. You got your own junk in your trunk because you're human. So there's no physical touch going on. There's being neglected, deprived. You're starving. Yeah. Okay? Let's just say that happens to be his love language. That's not everybody's love language, by the way. Others is emotional. It's like, I just want somebody to talk to, right? But let's just go back to his. And then all of a sudden he's at work. And, oh, this is his arm. well, no, okay, no. Somebody goes and touches Garen, right? And I'm not saying in a bad way. You got to hear me. Oh, how you doing? Oh, you're cologne. So you're so crazy. All of a sudden, he's getting touched, and he's not being touched at home. Some of you are laughing like, oh, touch. No, but I mean like in the most simplest, because we're talking about physical touch means a lot. So for him, a touch is like, oh my gosh, right? From his own wife, but it's not. He's not getting it because they're busy. So guess what? Outside of his own control, somebody just touches him, and he don't mean for it to happen, but it's like, wow, you're realizing like, why was that electrifying? I don't mean for it to. I don't even want that.
Chemical.
But starts that emotional connection. Start taking away from that barrier.
Yes, he's starving over here, right? That's why it's so important to water your own grass, right? Spend time with each other. That's what they're talking about. And a lot of people don't talk about this enough. You have to invest in each other. You have to carve out, find the time. It's unacceptable to not do it. You have to do it for the sake of your marriage, of your relationship, okay? And it's not bad to be there. It's bad to stay there.
I agree.
Right? And so that's helpful for all of us because some of you be like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I'm going to turn this off because I feel like that's me. It's not bad to be there. It's bad to stay there, right? Why do I say that? Because there's always a need to set up boundaries. There's always a need to adjust in a pocket and be at a better place. Better's better. And to check the pulse of how things are going, right? Just like, they have a system now that they look at, and there's accountability in there, right? And so now she can check his phone, he can check her, whatever, right? I have that in my own marriage, right? And it's really important. And I have to aim at that. It's tough. It ain't perfect. I don't want you to hear us saying, oh, we're on cruise control. But look, if you aim at nothing, you're going to hit nothing every time. Mm-hmm. The more you aim at something, though, the better you get at hitting whatever it is that you're aiming at. I mean, he'll tell you that. I mean, he's an expert and marksman. And
I actually, when you were saying that, I actually thought about a reference to basketball, right? Like,
okay.
If you never take a shot, you're never going to make a shot, right?
That's right.
So to be, to score, 40, points in a game, you know, even if it takes you 80 shots, like you're taking the shot, you're giving it you're trying, right? You're only going to improve over time as you continue to practice that. But if you never take that shot, then you're going to fail anyway.
And if you don't believe this, you don't have to, that's fine. But one day you're going to see in life, sooner or later, it's inevitable. If you don't set up boundaries in relationships, sooner or later, I mean, something will pop off and it'll happen. And even in the most, you know, from a emotional affair to a physical affair. But remember, anytime there's a physical affair, it all started with an emotional affair. An attachment. Hey, you know, you don't have time for each other, so now, you know, hey, DeAngela, you know, how was your day? Well, you don't even have time to ask her how her day was, right? No. And all of a sudden, let's just say her.
Nor did I have the emotional capacity.
Exactly. So
I'm drowning over here.
She's drowning, bleeding out, you know, and all of a sudden, someone's listening to her. Oh, you heard? I'm so sorry you're going through that. You know, and it can be. Here's what I want y'all to understand. When you do research and find out about how these things happen, I'm not saying all people, most people didn't start off their day saying, I'm going to go and have an affair. I'm going to have an emotional affair that's going to lead to a physical affair eventually if nothing breaks that up, right? Most of the time it's people that mean well, but because there's no boundaries, end up not doing so well. Yeah. And so I just wanted to hit on that. You know, perhaps
absolutely.
We'll go ahead.
No, you're good. Like I didn't want to miss my chance here because the piece. So I'm a social worker. I don't think I said that earlier. Yeah. But I do mental health. Right now, I get to take my experiences as a kid, as a young adult, as a new mom, not knowing which way was up. You know, like I take that and I get to be able to help people with it. And so something that I've learned over the years through school, through all these things, is that it's chemical, right? So the pleasure center of the brain is directly related to like the center of the brain, which is the emotion and the chemical and the memory.
Right.
So if I'm starving for his touch, I need that memory connection, right? And it doesn't even have to be somebody else. Or it doesn't have to be him. At some point, a level in your brain, the pleasure center of your brain, you get touched by somebody else, and that sparks a memory, a physical memory of feeling comforted or emotion. The emotion,
which sparks those endorphins
and adrenaline,
all the things that go along with
science. Come on,
the pleasure center of the brain. It lights up, and so you may not even know what the heck. Why did I just like get giddy all of a sudden? Like that was weird. She ain't even that pretty. Like I don't know.
No, for real. No, that's real stuff.
No, for real. It's the pleasure centers of the brain connected to your emotions.
See, some of y'all don't want to talk about this. We talking about it. Go ahead.
Just saying. So little things. That's how the devil works. Because we're all human. We're all made with these complicated brains in our system, and it's all connected. Yes. And so, like sometimes a simple touch can create a response in our brains that we don't understand, which creates a habit, which creates an automatic response to that habit.
Here's where I think it gets interesting, right? You could take the emotional relationship with someone, take that away, and put another sin in there, and it's the exact same thing.
Yep.
That's right.
Substance use.
Now let's talk about the opposite of that. What would that be? That means my love tank is full. So if my love tank is full, it don't make no never mind to me if somebody over there, and by the way, I'm not going to be promoting nobody put their hands on me like that. But let's just say it happens.
Yep.
Let's just say it happens. I'm not why? Because man, I'm Gucci. I'm straight at home. My love tank is filled because we taking care of business. The grass is being watered. It's when you starving. It's when you are in trouble, right? And you have to set up boundaries, and some of the practical things you've heard them talk about, you have to do. I heard one guy say this, that it is better to go overboard than to be thrown overboard.
Ooh.
Right? So some of you may be like, oh, that's a little bit extreme. That's overboard. Well, I'd rather go overboard voluntarily, and it checks out right than be thrown overboard, right? And blindly fall into some stuff that I didn't see, or those kind of things. So these are just good it's Valentine's Day. So we're trying to give you a gift and some blessings. Number one, being real and transparent, but also giving you some practical steps on. We have learned how not to do it, become experts.
And I want to throw one more thing in there too. And it's actually something that that I kind of, I guess, discovered about myself that I have a tendency to do just last week. Right?
Okay.
So in life group last week, we're talking after the sermon's over. It's like Sunday evening, and we're talking about the sermon and different stuff. Anyways, which we go to Harris Creek, by the way. So in terms of this conversation and barriers and compromises that you make, right? One thing that I realized that I have a tendency to do with certain things is I minimize sin in my life. Not everything, right? Not every sin, but there's certain things, language related.
Like a blind spot.
Just a little. I just turn a little blind eye to it, right? Because everybody at the PD, says a bad word or cusses, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I just minimize that sin here and there, right? And so over time, the more you minimize whatever that is, right, the easier it is to do it the next time, and that you make that compromise and you take that piece out of that barrier and you continue to take another piece out, and eventually you ain't got a barrier left.
Yep.
Slow fade.
Slow fade.
Reminds me of the AA stuff. There's nothing to see here. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm good.
But we can learn from it.
Yeah, but acknowledging is everything. Is just saying I do have a problem. If you do have a problem, there's something to fix, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing to need something to get fixed, right? Just acknowledge I need help and I want to do better. But if you're sitting there like I don't need no help, I'm good. And
one of my best friends had to ask me a question to raise that thought. I'd have kept ignoring it, right?
yeah,
He's the one that had to probe me.
really,
Well,
Oh yeah, I'm human.
no.
we all have blind spots, but in addition to that, it's like all the stuff that we've been through, like that could have been, which looking back, it was like 13 years ago or something like that, 12, 13 years ago. But that could have been a defining moment in our marriage where we've just like let it kill us, but it didn't. But from that, even there, it's like we could have stayed together and still stuck with like
Just being miserable.
being miserable, existing, going to church and not really living it,
Yeah,
not really trying to change our hearts. And we would have been fine, we could have even been kind of happy. But I think the biggest thing is that the Holy Spirit did such a work in us is that we realized, okay, we were committed not to give up in the beginning.
right.
And we never changed that, even through all this really hard days, those really hard times. And then after that, we could have been just okay. But what God put on our heart is to feed each other more than what we're really feeding ourselves. It's more about the Holy Spirit working in us to be better spouses because He deserves that.
And she deserved that.
Amen. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to have y'all come back.
Yeah.
This is gonna be good. There's so much to. I have to say this. We started Hope for My City, the whole movement through a.
Yeah, we were supposed to dive into this thing, man.
Through a music video. So back in the days, me and a good friend of mine, Dave Urabi, and others, he's a film producer from L.A. I call him L.A. Dave. We would do all these videos in the streets with all the people I know because I come from the streets, and we'd have a song called Church for the Streets, and you name it. Hope from I'm a Hope Boy, all these different. They had the cars with the big rims and everybody ex-convict, you name it, right? And what we would do is try to show that God is for the streets. God loves the people, even though they're broken, messed up, and thrown off and all that, because look what He did in my life. So we were doing that. And then all of a sudden there was this idea where I was seeing, at the time, there was a big emphasis on, basically to me, bullying law enforcement. And I didn't like that, right? Because I used to get bullied and I became a bully when I was a little kid. And then I started sticking up for people and that kind of thing. So now as a Christian, I've kind of been the same way, but God had put this desire in my heart to want to minister to law enforcement. I thought that was just crazy, like me, an ex-convict. That's never going to happen. But then anyway, fast forward in this video, I emailed the chief there at the time, and he gave a green light. I said, look, I'm just a little old fat dude from South Waco, happen to be a pastor now for all these years. I have this crazy idea. A guy's going to fly in from L.A. with the film crew. We only got 2 weeks, by the way. Anyway, it all worked out. Well, Garen, did I say it right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, man. You're 100%.
So was the person that the chief put in contact for this video. So I'm pulling up to the police station for the very first time, right? And I'm feeling awkward as all get out, and I'm like, Lord, be with us. And Garen was over there convincing others to he knows what I'm talking about, to show up to this video shoot that's gonna have ex-convicts, fresh out, and pastors that are ex-convicts, to be all a part of this video. Instead of the cars with the big rims and all that, so we're gonna have law enforcement cars with law enforcement there, and all of us representing.
Yeah, you were like, bring your cop cars and your lights, bro. Like, we're gonna do all this. We're gonna do it up. And I was like, okay.
And I'm like, it's gonna be dope, you know what I mean? And I said, I wish somebody would say something. We got stripes in these streets and all that, but we came together, and it was a beautiful thing. And there was, that thing went viral on Facebook, and it was crazy, and there was a lot of support from the community, both from the streets, and those in law enforcement. So it was a beautiful thing. And then after the pandemic, opportunity came up, and I was like, man, I feel like God is showing me to continue that movement through the platform of the podcast. So we came up with the Hope for My City podcast. Now it's a program, and we're working with Waco PD and other agencies, man, to be bridge builders, to come together to where they continue. Like in the video, you see an ex-convicts and law enforcement together, right? And now here right now, you're seeing us together. And, where we come from the streets, you don't just talk about it, you be about it. And so for us, it's like people need to see us. Forget talking in silos and we're saying we're for each other. They need to see us with each other. And so,
it's kind of crazy. I didn't want to interrupt, but I wanted to tell you this, because I know that we've talked about the human part of our job. We have the same mindset in law enforcement, in our culture, that don't talk about it, be about it. Kind of a thing. Like, I have heard that hundreds of times over the last 12 years. Yeah. Same thing, man. There's a lot of similarities because we're human. Yeah. Unfortunately, and we're gonna continue this on another day. We have to. It's a done deal. But we are the same, right? And one of the things that helped me put this whole thing together, that I felt God put in my heart to do, was that on one end, people like me, I can't speak for nobody else, who meant ill will towards people. I was suicidal. I didn't care about myself, neither anyone else. And for me, the enemy not only was law enforcement, but in a big way it was. But not just. I had a lot of people next to me that were my enemy, all that, right? But I remember, I lost my train of thought. I'm gonna edit this, but I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, I realized one thing, and that is that on this end, we scare our kids, to act right in the back seat, or in the house. If you don't be quiet, I'm gonna call the cops, or the cops are gonna come get you. We'll say the kukui means the monster, but then we'll say, the police are gonna come and get you. No, man, they see people get raided and they're traumatized, and they see their dad get arrested, or their mom get arrested, or the next door neighbor get somebody's uncle or whatever.
And so we play off that, like from the culture I come from, like, all right, so they're going to arrest you if you don't be quiet, you know. And in the back seat, we're not telling them to put their seatbelts on. We're just saying, hey, you better hush up, sit down.
Yep, same.
Or the cop. And then, so that's us, right? So we scare our kids to be scared of the cops, right? And then on the other end, as I understand it, there's those that say, oh, look at those, stay away from those guys, right? Because we look a lot, you know, like, you know, you're all tatted up. Some people go to prison and look like me, some people don't, but we all look the same. Got a hoodie on, whatever it is. And a lot of people have been robbed by folks that look like me, for instance, as an example. And so they grab their person like, oh my gosh, you know, be careful. There's one of those guys, you know. We're the same way. We're like, who does the laws? You know, 5-0s, whatever. Move around, be careful, you know. And so we're all scared, and there's just boundaries and biases that come into it. So I'm realizing all this, right? Just a little old fat dude from South Waco, and I'm like, we have to do a better job at building bridges, understanding. The Bible says, and all you're getting, get you some understanding. And so the way you do that is put yourself in other people's shoes and say, oh, well, if I say the cops, you know, act a certain way about me, well, we act a certain way about the cops. We even say stuff about the cops. And so somebody got to come together and make a difference, have solution-based conversation or solution-based moves to show people better than we could tell them. And so all I want to say is, you know, the Bynums were a part of that. And, you know, DeAngela, you know, I've seen her at work in the reintegration.
Out at the jail.
At the jail, and her heart for people. And I was like, man, it's dope. She has some kind of past. I didn't know to what extent, but I was like, well, that's dope. I mean, and then.
Hey, don't judge a book by its cover, okay?
Well, I ain't gonna lie. I was like, then I'm like, oh, you're married to, dude.
Yeah, you didn't know the connection until.
No, but it blew me away because I'm like, oh my gosh, bro, he's the one that we met and the whole 9 yards. But I say all that part. Just say I appreciate you guys for who you are. You're a power couple, in the power of Jesus, right?
Absolutely.
But you're a power couple. And I say that because a lot of people say that about me and my wife, and so I take that and I say, when people big up who we are in God, because it's only because of God that we're that way, when I recognize that, I'm just going to kind of use that when people, what people say about me about it, I'm going to say that.
I'm not going to lie. I was like, what does he see? What kind of power is he talking about? Because, like, we got some stuff, man.
Yeah, we're a mess.
No, but here you are, though.
You humble yourself.
How many years later?
16 years later, and man, we say this to our life group at church all the time, but I think that we have the absolute strongest marriage now that we've ever had, even when we were newlyweds. Like we're stronger and better together now than we've ever been.
And we trust each other more, and we love each other more, and we want to spend time together.
Yeah, we actually know how to communicate now.
Yeah.
You want to? What did you say?
We want to spend time together. Yeah.
So that means you put your foot down. Right,
I think God did that because nothing I said mattered for a while.
I mean now, right? So now you being the protector God has always called you to be. Now you've been able to rechannel that to use that to protect the marriage, right? With the hedges and vice versa.
Absolutely.
And so anyway, well, let's say deuces to everybody. But thank y'all for showing up, man. We appreciate it. We'll have you come back, and we'll continue this conversation. So talk to y'all later. Hope you enjoyed it.
All right.